Hey guys, Thomas Genie here, aka Mustached, and welcome back to some more horror movie reviews. If you end up enjoying this one, then please consider joining my Patreon. That'll be the second link in the description below. So this movie's called The Last Laugh. So we start this movie off following a comedian named Miles, who's getting ready to do some comedy by practicing on a stage that is pretty empty and not getting a lot of crowd reception. He has a friend slash client named Nelson who seems to want to genuinely help him out. At least for the money, from what I can gauge later on in the movie. So Miles walks off. We cut to two individuals who work at this little theater place named Lawrence and Dana. Work at the theater. If I didn't bother repeating myself there. Anyway, Dana leaves Lawrence to do some work, and when he's alone, he overhears an individual and sees a man with a mask. He's freaked out and tries to run, but is quickly stabbed when he's on the stage, or on the back part of the stage, and is killed. We cut back to this little flashback moment that is pretty constant throughout the movie, where Miles sees this car crash, or bits and pieces of a car crash, but then enters this, area. So Miles is led to the theater room. He's been invited to be an opening act. He's going over his notes. He gets a bit of a moment of blood vision, I guess, but it's fake. And Nelson gives him a visit, saying that he shouldn't take his pills, and that we learn that he's on some sort of medication of some sorts. Then he meets Dana, the woman we saw earlier, and Andy, one of the people that work backstage. He also meets the top billing comedian named Reggie. And once the two of them talk, Reggie makes it pretty clear, pretty fast, that he is the one at the top billing and that Miles should know his place. So you can think of it like, by comparison, like a big YouTuber talking to a small YouTuber about never making it big on YouTube, or, something like that. Except that doesn't actually happen on YouTube. Because big YouTubers don't interact with smaller YouTubers. So that was a moment where I was like, oh, that kind of reminds me of YouTube. Except without the actual interaction. Anyway, after Reggie makes it very clear what his deal is, Miles overhears some noises and finds a dead body in his room, and he tries to tell this woman, her name comes up way later, Beth, about this body, but since apparently he's a comedian, she assumes that he's joking. So he kind of doesn't bring it up ever again to anyone else, which, figure that one out. But Nelson is bringing up how he can have an attempt at success. He says that he's found a client that is interested in Miles, so Miles is getting distracted by the potential glory of being in the big leagues. However, he hears some more noises when he's off on his own, but gets quickly cut off and meets towards this designer character named Jared. Afterwards, Miles talks with Dina in her room about needing a shower, so he does so. We cut back to the designer, who hears some of his own noises, and then looks around and gets spooked, only to see the masked man, and the masked man kills him. So Miles is having more flashbacks while in the bath, and sees some more brief blood. But this time, this blood has a bit more blood on his hands, literally and, well, figuratively, I should say. There we go. Anyway, Andy then talks over with Dina, and Miles is still within the vicinity, but doesn't overhear them, I don't think, anyway. Meanwhile, Miles's friend Nelson checks in with the music designer Bryce. So when Miles gets out and it's just Dina, she invites him to a drink. And they share their drink and be on their little way. So Miles goes back to the designer only to see that he's dead too. But there's no body, just the blood. Miles takes his pills and checks just to make crystal clear that the blood is very real. He gets told to go by the basement by Beth after Beth was just there, so he could have showed her the blood, but he doesn't, so figure that one out. Meanwhile, the music guy named Bryce spills coffee over the mixer and goes to go get it fixed. Meanwhile, Andy and Beth are chatting about so Bryce goes to get a new mixer. He heads all the way down to the basement. And he runs to the downstairs and sees the masked man. He is not, freak out enough for any of the three who are pretty close by to notice, so figure that one out. Even after getting slashed once, you would probably want to scream out for help, or at least try to. But no, he's ended up sliced and diced to death. And Miles sees that Jared is still alive, somehow, and sees the masked killer down there. And he's, up the stairs, so he's, staring at the killer, and he runs up the stairs, and he locks the door, so he leaves, Jared behind. So this is, the biggest asshole move Miles does in the entire movie. Well, there's one other, but, So Nelson has successfully brought over the agent who is now there, and people are starting to file in. Meanwhile, Miles heads back to Dana, who's talking about now her wanting to sell the theater. She rolls up his sleeves and tells him to get some good luck out there. Meanwhile, Beth and Andy are, again, kind of checking in with each other. And Miles goes back to Reggie, the big old comedian, and this time Miles is telling off Reggie and telling him how he not only sold out, but how he has lost his way in comedy in general. This is the equivalent of whenever I challenge big YouTubers and they don't do a thing. There you go. There's another one for you. Anyway. So Beth goes over to the booth to see what the whole issue with the music is. So she's left alone, while Andy checks in with Dana, saying that the stage is about, or the thing is about to happen. Only to see that killer is there. And of course is stabbed. So, Miles, now completely at the brink of losing it, tells Nelson that there's something bad going on in this place. And he tries to show first the body, which was clearly a sign of a mistake, because the body was gone for probably a while now. Probably could have taken him downstairs to the basement first and showed him the blood, but whatever. So they separate off, and Nelson goes off to get a drink, finds Dana's room, and he sees first Andy's dead body, goes, huh, and then gets stabbed by the killer as well. So Miles sees this, because he's within the general vicinity of it, and makes a little bit of a peep. Just enough for the killer to pay attention and start to move in. Miles, all the way, is trying to move while now getting all pained from taking the pill from earlier. So he's like hiding and moving around. But before he can hit the stage and make some sort of announcement or something or other, he is stabbed by the killer. And he gets more flashes of the full events of how he is, his flashback about the crash and how his wife had died. And then he stabbed after the flashback. So Miles asks who the killer is, and the killer obliges by taking off the mask, but does it off camera, so we don't see who it is, although I have a pretty strong feeling I know exactly who it is, probably Reggie. But that's just based off of the height of the character. And so Miles never gets to perform or warn people about what just happened. And we cut away to the radio people who at the very beginning of the movie, who we heard when Miles was driving toward the theater, talk about how now that Miles has died, how one of his YouTube videos, mentioning YouTube on actually in the movie, now that he is dead, he has become even more popular, which is something that does typically tend to happen with people who have been famous already that have passed away. Their legacy gets more notoriety and more attention. So yeah, and that is The Last Laugh. So that's that in terms of the events of the movie. I thought this movie had a little bit more potential. There's a bit of stupidity from Miles, I feel like, a bit too much. In terms of when the killer strikes, and, he clearly sees the first body. I can play off the first one and see, like, oh, they think he's a comedian, haha. Even though I would also find it odd in the reverse order of, like, but he's talking about something pretty serious right now, so I don't know. Probably should at least, at the very minimum, check it out. But once the opportunity arises, he's so determined to land the gig that he's willing to see all these other people die. One in particular, Jared, the one that did the music stuff, because he saw it, he was down there, and he just left him there to get that attempt at a performance, only to get stabbed later on. So that did not end up working out in his favor whatsoever. Interestingly enough, out of all the characters that are in this movie, the only one that we don't see have anything bad happen to is Beth, the one that went to go fix the music thing. Everyone else meets an untimely death. Miles gets, at the middle of the movie, gets affected by, or inflicted by the painkillers, or the pain from the memories, at the, when it's convenient for the killer to catch up. As I mentioned before, even though we don't see the killer, I think because of Miles's line, he actually says, well, that's pretty funny, before he dies, so that implies that we should know who it is. At least I think that's the case. Very strongly. So at least they have that, but I don't know. So yeah, this movie seems to have an ending where the main character dies. But I do appreciate at the very minimum that they do make the case of like, oh, when a comedian dies, this one just happened to be popular and funny at the time, or at a time, and made a video at a time, so he became even more popular after the fact. Again, something that seems to happen quite often, so I understand the ending that they went for. However, I do think that some of the moves that the characters make weren't so bright. So I would give this movie like a 5 out of 10. In between. And that is my review of The Last Laugh. Even if you ended up enjoying it, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. One to my Discord server, the other to my Patreon page. Any donations are greatly appreciated. Until next time, everyone, bye-bye.